Hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar on end user support. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. This is just going to be a short session, should only take about half an hour of your time. Next slide. So I'll just introduce you to our speakers here at LIMA. Joining us today is Martin Ingham, our Chief Technical Officer, and Mark Howie, our Senior Account Director. At the end, we will have a short Q&A session. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please just feel free to write your questions in the questions box. Okay, I'll hand over to Mark now.
Thanks, Lena. And yeah, hello everyone. Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn, in a series of sessions we've had over the last 3 to 4 months, sort of showcasing the breadth of our MSP services we've developed and delivered over many years, and some that have been developed and launched more recently. So as Selena mentioned, I'm Mark Howie. I'm a Senior Account Director here for the business. Worked for LIMA for just coming up to 12 years and within the industry for some 24. I think I've acquired 2 children, 3 dogs, and lost quite a bit of hair in that time. But yeah, I'm going to be handing off to Martin Ingham, Chief Technology Officer. I've worked with Martin throughout that time. He's been with LIMA for longer than me, and you know, we've seen the landscape shift massively in terms of the MSP world and sort of demand from customers. And you know, the idea today is to showcase our EOS service. Before I hand off to Martin, he's going to go into a bit more detail around that. I thought it would be prevalent. I mean, I've looked at the attendee list today, and I can see lots of sort of familiar names on the list from existing customers, but quite a few new ones. So I thought it would be a good idea just to give you a 5-minute overview or sort of a bit of background about LIMA and some context, why we've launched EOS as a service, you know, and ultimately what that means for your business, you know, what value it can bring to customers' organisations. Next slide, please. So yeah, stepping back slightly, around about 4 years ago, LIMA's board spent a lot of time sort of working out and developing our vision for the next 5 years from that point. And you know, we wanted to understand what we wanted the business to look like in 5 years' time, where we saw ourselves, and ultimately where we saw the best positions for us to deliver value for our customers. And so we built a strategy which was developed and sort of saw us moving towards becoming a complete MSP. And we coined that phrase. And what we meant by that was building out a service portfolio that would support customers' objectives and sort of desired business outcomes, and allow them to sort of take the focus away from IT service and focus on what they do as an organisation. So LIMA's always delivered infrastructure services for the last 25 years, and more recently with the adoption of cloud, you know, cloud managed services. But as I said, in that 4-year period, we've also expanded the portfolio to deliver some security services. So you can see MDR, Managed Detect and Respond there, and MVAS, who've been really well taken and well received by customers. Things like cloud telephony, and also sort of a range of optimization services that sit across all of that to help customers drive as much value as they can out of their investment in IT service. And for me, I think all these services have been developed in response to customer demand, but also I think in a change in technology adoption within the market, you know, that we've seen from customers, a change in an acceleration in adopting cloud services, for example. And I think EOS is no different to that. You know, we've seen an evolution in the way that people work, particularly over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, you know, sort of during COVID and post-COVID, with you know, the sort of new norm being hybrid working. That creates quite a lot of challenge for organisations around delivering IT services and end user support particularly. I think, you know, for me, IT departments have become they're further away from the user base than they ever have been from a physical perspective, and again that creates quite a lot of challenge when looking to try and deliver consistent user experience and a good quality support model to help people deal with issues on a day-to-day basis. It's become very challenging, and I think customers have been looking at ways through technology adoption and service with partners, ways in which they can overcome those challenges. I think we've seen in the last sort of 18 months to 2 years a significant demand from customers looking at EOS as a viable service to outsource, or at least to complement the existing IT departments. And this is where EOS was launched. So about 8 months ago, we launched the service, and the idea was to help customers overcome these challenges that we'd identified. And that's the sort of kind of outcomes that we've seen customers achieve from onboarding end user support, increasing productivity, an increase in being able to deliver a consistent experience in a hybrid workforce. I think also the ability to attract more talent. When I speak to anyone in business, really, customers, suppliers, anyone over the last sort of 3 or 4 months, one of the biggest challenges that most businesses are facing is around talent retention and acquisition. Going out and finding new talent has been very, very difficult. I think people are demanding more flexibility, demanding more agility, the ability to work from anywhere, work from home, certainly at least in a hybrid model. And if you've not got the right tools and service models to deliver a consistent end user experience, you're going to struggle to retain that talent. And we've seen that that hurt a lot of our customers over the last sort of 3 or 4 months. So I think end user support and outsourcing that can help IT departments to shift the focus from trying to maintain those levels of consistency and spending the majority of their days keeping the lights on and dealing with end user support issues, and that shift that focus into into looking at digital transformation and really focusing their attention on how they can drive the business forward and drive the business and IT strategy forward. So as I say, I'm going to hand off to Martin now, who's going to talk through the service in a bit more detail. As Selena mentioned, and we have got a chat box for Q&A. Please feel free to drop any questions. We'd love to hear from you, and we can pick those up at the end. Thanks for listening, Martin.
Brilliant, thanks, Mark. So yeah, I'm going to spend the kind of remainder of the webinar going into the detail of the service, what it is, why you should consider taking it from LIMA, and some detail on how we deliver, and also again some information on pricing as well, because it's a key aspect of any decision. So we, like Mark said as he was talking through kind of the complete MSP model, we've spent the last 4 or 5 years kind of broadening out our portfolio of services to our customers, and for us, end use support is the final piece of the puzzle. We've delivered third line and proactive support for nearly 20 years now in different guises, and it's fair to say that we've taken our time to kind of build the right service that will deliver in the right way for our customers, and we've taken kind of the last 2 years really to design and architect the service and launch it around about 8 months ago. And I'll talk through kind of why that was and how that shaped the service as we go through the webinar. But ultimately, what is the service? What is it that we're offering to customers, and why is it of value? We see it as a really straightforward remote end user device and application support. So this is about supporting both the end users, their applications, and also the devices that they use to access those services. We do provide an SLA through this service. So for customers that are familiar with our other support services, particularly proactive and active, broadly speaking, the instant SLAs that we provide through that service apply to end use. So everything from 15-minute kind of response SLA, depending on the severity of the situation for the end user. So it is an SLA backed service with a service credit model to make sure that you can hold us to account in terms of delivering a quality service for you. Key aspect is it's a really transparent, simple to understand pricing model. So per user per month, very similar to a lot of other consumption-based models, where that's 365 cloud-based services. So very, very transparent and clear, and some benefits around budgeting, which I'll come on to later. Mark touched on it when he was kind of opening the webinar, but we took our time really and spent a lot of time and effort learning, sometimes from our own experience as a business as well, and the challenges that we had really coming out of the COVID situation, and how that's impacted our own workforce, and listening to our customers around some of the issues they've got with being able to provide consistency in service and delivery models for end user support. So our service is geared up and designed around working in a hybrid world with employees geographically dispersed, and I'll talk a little bit how we achieve that through the model and the technology. One of the big advantages we see for this service is it brings enhanced quality through the use of ITIL-based service frameworks. So again, in similar ways to we've delivered other service models for our customers through Proactive, bringing that that level of quality and that consistency into the end user space is something that's not very common. So achieving improved consistency and quality of delivery of service through that ITIL-based model, that's something that the service is based on. And also moving more emphasis to end user empowerment. So as the workforce kind of the millennials and the gig economy and all those kind of people come into the workforce, it's becoming more and more prevalent to provide leading edge experiences, empowerment to users. They want to be self-sufficient in their consumption of IT, and so putting more capability, whether they choose to use it or not, into their hands to allow them to be self-sufficient through issue resolution and certain self-service aspects, and also delivering some elements of self-healing kind of solutions and remediation to end user issues or end user challenges. So why would you consider taking service? What is it that's going to directly benefit you and your staff? One of the key aspects of the way that we deliver end user support, and it feeds into our ethos and our mission as an insight-led organisation, is to provide tangible insight into the user experience through that end user support service. So using the tooling, the technology and the platforms, we can provide you with tangible, measurable experience scores for your users, how they're interacting with IT, how they're interacting with their applications and services, and what they're experiencing in the use of that technology. So everything from the performance of their device to what kind of issues they're seeing, maybe interacting through some of those platforms. So being able to target improvement for specific groups of users or individuals, potentially even before they're aware that there's an issue. So enabling you to continually develop and improve that end user experience through those insight-led reporting metrics. We see that ITIL framework as being really, really important in terms of delivering a consistent experience and delivering quality improvements in terms of how end user support is delivered. It's quite common for these practices to apply to large scale infrastructure support or enterprise grade support services, but it's not that common to certainly for an MSP to be delivering that ITIL integration into that end user space. So that's for those of you that aren't familiar with ITIL, everything from consistent incident management to release management and patching, problem management and change control as well. So it provides strong governance, auditability of what's happening within the EUS space, so that you have clear visibility on how that service is changing and how you're improving that service for your end users over time. Delivering a secure and consistent experience for those hybrid workforce. I explained that we'd spent a lot of time learning from kind of the workforce changes that are still happening, and I think certain organizations are grappling to kind of get to grips with, but leveraging certain technologies like Microsoft 365 services and our IT service management framework and tooling to deliver that consistent support. So consistent standards through device configuration, policy management, security and identity management services, accessibility, application updates, making sure that you can provide that through our service to your end user, and that you no matter where you are, whether you're sat in one of your offices, whether you're sat at home, whether you're sat in a public space, those employees are getting the same experience regardless of location. That's achieved through the technology stack that we utilize. This service allows you to decouple, I suppose, some of the forklift costs and significant upfront costs with delivering any support, and scale that service depending on the change of your business, whether that's scaling up, scaling down, any kind of growth plans that you have, and providing you with that transparent per user cost that helps with budgeting and planning how and what the impact is of kind of end user support and delivering IT to the end user estate. The service is and it kind of went with that graphic that Mark was talking over around the complete MSP. It fully takes into account all of our other services and integrates with those other services, particularly things like proactive and active support and managed vulnerability services, as well as some of our cloud services. So potentially that allows you to take a full end-to-end service-based solution from LIMA around all of your support needs, but it also is sympathetic and conscious of the fact that you may have existing services from, again, particularly things like proactive, where there's some overlap and need to integrate some of that end user support methods and frameworks into that kind of more infrastructure-based service management and support. So that allows you to kind of be reassured in the fact that if you're needing to raise any support issues with us, that will integrate into those proactive elements, so that there's no need to kind of hand off to different organizations. We can deliver an end-to-end support wrap from almost cradle to grave in terms of that end user experience, whether it's the end user device or the back end infrastructure, and that integration is there. And it allows you to look at optimizing your costs of how you're delivering end user support currently, and allows you to move to a more predictable budgeting model based on that per user per month pricing frame, which I'll kind of explain in detail how the pricing model works at the end of the webinar, but gives you consistency in terms of your ability to budget and plan, whether that's as an acquisition or through organic growth, or even scaling back some of your resources. It allows you to kind of plan well in advance and understand what the impact of any of those decisions are. So what do we provide specifically through the service? What's actually included? Like I covered on the previous slide, it's an ITIL-backed service, so very similar to proactive in that sense, but fundamentally at the heart of or the core of this service is our ability to control and provide asset management, because that kind of underpins a lot of the other elements of ITIL. So asset management for your end user estate, where that's desktop, laptops, mobile devices, the hardware that those end users are utilizing and consuming. It includes desktop hardware and operating system support, as well as mobile support as well. So if those users are using tablets or mobiles or desktops, that's included, and the pricing isn't limited typically by device. It's limited by the user. So the user could have multiple devices, a combination of 2 or 3 different devices, and they're all included in that per user per month cost. In terms of some of the specific software elements that we support, we're supporting email services, file services, identity management, so typically Active Directory, so that's passwords, password reset, password management, all the things that come with kind of end user management of Active Directory, mobile device management, antivirus and printing, as well as Microsoft 365 support. So Microsoft 365 support is particularly important because it's fundamental to the way that we deliver this service. So 365 has a whole suite of products, and the majority of our customers, and even customers that don't know, are already consuming some element of those services, and so there's a lot of capability within that product and typically the licensing that customers are using around device management and provisioning devices, how you're managing security and access controls, that is in that product that can really shape consistency and standardization, and that's how we that's really how we are providing that standard consistent experience for users. When I talk about kind of some of the onboarding elements and the process, I'll explain that in a little bit more detail in a few minutes. Hardware provision and deployment. So whether you want to completely rely on us to source and deliver that hardware, whether you want to source your own hardware and we're just managing some of the provisioning elements, we're using some of the technology within that 365 stack to automate and standardize hardware provisioning and deployment, and that is a critical element of that seamless experience for users. That kind of whether that's a new starter that's joining your organization or someone that's had an issue with a device, that technology and that process allows us to rapidly deploy and re-provision device and hardware to users no matter where they are, even if that device is fresh from the factory and they're opening it for the first time. That's a fully integrated service that delivers that automated out-of-box experience for your employees. So when they're getting a device, it automatically configures itself. It has the right software and applications. There's no interaction really required from the user other than to enter a username and password. So fully kind of integrated and automated. We manage starters, moves, and levers. So integrating with some of your HR procedures to mobilize new IT services for employees, as well as the leaving process and everything that goes in between that. We deliver software application deployment and third-party triage support. So whether that's line of business applications, whether that's standard office applications, we will deliver those deployment updates, those deployment packages, and integrate that into the environment, as well as manage all of those third-party triage requirements for any line of business applications that you require to be supported. It is a remote support model, so it's based on remote support services with the option for on-site visits. That on-site visit is, like I say, is optional, and that's something that can be kind of specified on an individual requirement. So what you're requiring in terms of those on-site visits, but it is a remote support model, and again, given what we see around hybrid working and the geography of the workforce, and that model is started to come into its own, and the fabric of working practice supports in a really clear way that remote working model. It's manned service desk based on our Manchester office from 7 AM to 7 PM Monday to Friday, and it is SLA backed as well, like I've talked about previously, starting at 15 minutes for kind of critical instance, with various SLAs associated with different priorities. It does give you access to customer success manager. So if you already have other services with us, you'll be familiar with the customer success manager concept, and this service would kind of dovetail into that existing relationship with that CSM. But if you're not an existing customer, that customer success manager is fundamental in making sure that you're maximizing the value of the services that you have from LIMA, as well as making sure that we're held to account in terms of the quality of the service that we're providing you. So that's your avenue to make sure that we're delivering exactly what we're saying we're going to deliver, and also provide that insight. So what I talked about earlier around end user experience and providing guidance and insight into decisions around the end user experience, that comes from your customer success manager. It also includes proactive support for Active Directory, Microsoft 365, and elements of networking services. Again, because of the technology stack we're using to deliver this service, it requires tight integration with Active Directory, 365, and typically connectivity services, particularly for customers that are predominantly hybrid. So we include proactive support for those elements as well. So how does it work? How do we take you from a conversation like today into effectively delivering this service? And obviously this is quite high level in what we can talk about in a webinar, but we can go into more detail if you're interested in terms of having conversation with your account manager. But it starts with a supportability health check and typically a gap analysis review. So we're not coming in to say you have to take this model day one, and if you don't, you can't have this service. We're very aware of the fact that customers in the end user space have different situations with devices, technology, how those applications are being delivered, and there's a period of transition to get you into that kind of standardized model that delivers that quality end user service and that consistent experience for a hybrid workforce. So that's done through predominantly a free of charge health check in the pre-sales process. Depending on the complexity, that there is scope to maybe need some additional more sophisticated assessment services from us, but generally speaking, with our existing customers, this is a free of charge process that's covered through pre-sales, which is looking at the health of your current end user environment and any gaps that might need to be considered. That will lead to the development of a transition plan, and this is more around getting you to what we perceive to be the end state in terms of a really effective end user support. That's typically a 12-month process, so you've got 12 months really to go through that process, which we'll kind of handhold you through, and also factor in where you stand maybe from a budgeting point of view, because we appreciate it might not be possible to achieve that in that time frame, but generally speaking, it's a 12-month process. So then we look at and move into some of the more administrative elements of onboarding, so putting in those ITIL frameworks and explaining to you and potentially even some of your end users what that means, the tooling deployment in terms of our service management tooling that we use to deliver that reporting, the ticket management, some of the automation, and also some of that knowledge management and training and third-party integration work as well. So making sure we captured all the third parties that you work with on that end user estate, and what we need to do to be able to support and triage those, and that ultimately leads to the full kind of SLA backed model. So full supportability, the insight reporting, and the SLA backed credit model. So last slide from me, just touching on the pricing. So it is a fixed cost per user per month, and it starts from £35 per user. That varies depending on the level of maturity in terms of some of the supporting technologies to deliver that consistent hybrid experience, but it starts from that £35 per user. And like I mentioned before, there is the ability to add in optional monthly site visits, and that could be once a month, it could be multiple times a month, for an additional fee depending on what you require from us. So I'll hand back to Selena just to see if there's any questions from anybody before we wrap up today's webinar. So back to you, Selena.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah, so we just have a couple of minutes, so I'll just see what questions came in. Mark, I think this is a question for you. Have your customers had any success with this service?
Well, yes, yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned service was launched around 8 months ago. We've got a few customers who've taken it on. Probably call out one in particular. I think it's a good example. In fact, I think we have a quote from him, the CTO there, David Warburton, his business called Innovate Healthcare. So they had quite a bit of challenge around some sort of legacy systems and platforms, and they were looking to modernise, and they're going through a digital transformation program. But they were also hit with some risk around some key members of staff leaving. And whilst the service is long-term is designed to complement an on-premise IT function, we've sort of been able to implement the service, really rigorous onboarding exercise, which I think, in all honesty, I wasn't quite aware, if I'm being completely frank, being one of the sales guys, how rigorous it really is. I think looking at and being involved in some of those conversations, the devil really is in the detail, and the more we do around the robust onboarding process, we've got a really in-depth sort of documented methodology of onboarding, the better the service will look as it starts to launch and go live, and they've had a really positive experience. And I think what it's done for them is completely de-risk how they are delivering end user support moving forwards. As I say, it's complementing existing IT people that they've now been able to replace. But ultimately, yeah, for the long term, they can just ensure that they're delivering that consistent user experience, and they're starting to look at at ways of attracting talent, outside of the usual sort of geographical spaces that they would, from a recruitment perspective. So yeah, really, really positive experience from those guys, and David's been a great reference for us around the service.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Just one for Martin. So does this service replace in-house IT support roles?
Not necessarily, no. I think I didn't touch on it actually in the webinar so far, but we very much encourage some on-site IT support to remain, and the intention here is that it frees up that resource that was primarily delivering new support to focus on more business impactful piece of work. So actually moving your business forward in terms of what IT is delivering and supporting some of those transformation programs, whether that's through application development, technology improvement, and really driving change within them. So we see this more of a repurposing of that capability into more valuable roles for our customers, rather than kind of an outsourcing model. And the service does have advantages in terms of having at least one person still there for some of the kind of day-to-day things anyway. So no, we don't see this as a full replacement.
Okay, thanks very much, Martin, and thanks, Mark. I'm going to end this session now. Thanks everyone for listening.